Okay, we're making good progress on our lens here. We still need a few things to make this look a little more realistic, and I think I'm going to start by creating a shadow on the second inner circle here, just to start giving it a little more depth than it currently has. So we'll go into the effects panel and add just a bit of shadow that's 200, maybe along the lines of where our light source is coming, so in the same direction from top right to bottom left. And then we'll increase the radius here just to offset a bit, just to give it some depth. Maybe increase the opacity a bit. Great. And we could even go as far as to do that as the same style on the outer one here. We can just apply the similar effect over there, so maybe I'll do that. It's hard to see, but it will make a difference in the very end. Okay. So to make this even more dynamic, we can go ahead and start creating the lens portion, the actual glass piece. So in that, I actually want it to have a base that is a lighter shade first. So this will be underneath the glass portion, if you can think of it that way. So we'll get to where we can make that a little more realistic here. I'm going to make this a linear gradient instead. And we'll go to dark on the bottom left. And probably make this pretty dark, but still a gray, dark gray tone. And inside that, we need another shape that's basically the opposite, mimicking what we did with these outer lighter portions. So this seems like a lot of shapes right now, but you'll see how I'm going to tweak this. So let's go ahead and reverse this to something like that. And above that, we can start toying with creating a kind of a purplish looking circle that goes over top. So I want it to actually kind of meet this circle in the middle. We need to move this at the very top of our shapes here. I have quite a few going on, so if it's hard to follow, I apologize. But let's go ahead and scale this down to match that. We want some opacity with this layer, so lose the stroke for now. And we'll go ahead and get to our colors panel. And the fill is going to be a radial effect, I think. And we're going to toy with some purples and greens in this case. So maybe something like so, but we want the opacity down. And we can go to black here and just kind of turn the opacity all the way down there. This one, we can bring it back up just a touch. So I'm going to start there. It's not perfect yet, but we can make it a little more believable here. Kind of want it to butt up against that other shape, almost the same size as it actually. So we'll scale that down just inside the stroke. And referring to our first one, it looks like we have kind of a blue portion on the top and a purple on the bottom. So I actually want this to be the bottom. So let me go ahead and flip this gradient to be that way. So you can grab the handle with the gradient tool and just do kind of a 180 here. If it'll let me, I can do it with that one. There we go. It looks like it's a radial, so I actually want this to be linear. So we'll put this at the bottom and kind of go a little over the height of the actual circle itself, or ellipse, I should say. Okay, great. So I'm going to duplicate that layer and we'll tweak it some more, but I'm going to get started with the other layer that's going to be more of that blue color that I'm after. And this one's kind of toy with a kind of a deep navy blue. Decrease the opacity there as well. And this, we don't want this to span the full width of this lens, so to speak. So I want it to kind of adjust the center point of it. And the bottom piece could be done a little better as well. Maybe we could tweak these a bit. So we have a kind of a foundational look there. It's not quite up to spec, but we need some layers in between to make it look more believable, as well as these glares as I have. So let's go ahead and add a few more shapes. And the middle, very middle, will be a dark shape. So let's add another gradient. And it looks like it's at the very bottom of our layers, so I need to move it to the very top, but underneath these. And it can be, at this point, maybe just a black circle, but I'm going to add a kind of a flurry effect that is using a certain style. So let's go ahead and do radial. I'm going to add another dark layer. And I'm going to reverse this so it's kind of in a different position, and we can adjust it by clicking on the actual gradient. I might adjust the angle of it just so it's kind of coming off the bottom, and then we'll overlap that with another, yes, another circle. Keep saying it's more or less trial and error, and the fact that I'm trying to record this and make it perfectly like the other one, there's probably zero chance it will be exactly like it, but it can get close. I would say just experiment with different shapes and gradients till you get to something that looks the most realistic, you know. So there's no wrong answer here. I would say looking at a real camera will probably do you the most benefit here. I'm gonna put this at the very top and just decrease the opacity. So we're mimicking the shape below it. And this entire circle portion can be a lot smaller, I think. Make it almost like an eye. So something like so. Let's see how we're going. So we've got some green in the middle too, so that's one big indication here. So you need yet another circle. Make it a little bit bigger. And I'm going to put it as a radial gradient as well. And I think the very middle will be a green. Kind of like that. We need to add a point though, so I'm going to make the outer edge black, the middle green, maybe make it a little tighter by adding more handles to the mix. And that green's a little unbelievable, so let me adjust this. Something like that, I think. You can add a little noise if you want. So then that is, let's see what state that's in. We've got the layer above it. Center these. So the one above it, I want it to be a little more dark. Almost 100% actually. Great. Okay. And you'll notice how vibrant this one looks, and it's partially due to the fact that these are overlaying. There's a set of curves I created that are overlaying the lens itself, and it's just making it a lot more dynamic. And I noticed the ellipse I made here is actually just one circle. So I might go back and revert these two shapes I created into one. So let's try that. That might make it a little easier to recreate. Let's create one big circle. It's going to maintain the fill we've had before. So let's go ahead and delete that. And the middle one, I want it to be black. The outer edges, I'll be maybe that blue color and the purple color, but decrease the opacity. And I feel like it's a linear gradient, or is it radial? So I did radial, and there's blue, black, blue, purple. Okay, so let's try to mimic that. So something like so. And then that can go towards the back a little to increase the size a little bit more. Let's see how this looks after we kind of go back. And I'll decrease the opacity a tad just so the lens actually shines through. Same is true for this layer. It's a little much. This one I want to bring forward. Maybe one more. Yeah. So if we zoom out, it's kind of taking shape. It's not perfect, but it's getting there. I think on this last lens, I want to lose the stroke, or at least decrease it, maybe to 2 points. Just so it's not so obtrusive. This outer one here. Yeah, I might try losing that stroke. So it's more of an inner shadow look. Let's refer to this. I'm gonna just double check what we have here. It looks like it's just on the outer edge. We've got a little glare going on in that other shape too. So I think what's throwing this off a tad is this needs to be even darker. And these need to be a little lighter. Bear with me here. Here we go. I think that's more believable. So then we can zoom this in, make it a little bit less size than the circle there, so it looks like it's inside of it. And we can center everything up top. Let's just do all these. There we go. All right, so this center circle I would say is still a little large. We've got a lot smaller here. And I think that's one thing I need to take care of. So let's go ahead and do that. Make this dark circle a little less dark. Make it centered. And then I noticed I still need one more square or circle that covers just the little eyelet of this blue down here, just so it's a little more exact. So we'll just do a hard black there, no stroke. So something like that, because it kind of gives it that there's that eye of the camera there, but then there's this glare on the outer edge. The same is true for this layer. We can add maybe a shape over top that's kind of mimicking this green, very light green, so I can make it just a fill of green. And we'll try and mask it maybe like that, but this obviously needs to be way less in brightness, so let's bring that down. And then we can even go as far as to do a gradient on that, so it's a little more believable. It's kind of going from light to dark. And on this specific layer, I think I'm going to throw a blur effect on. So I'm going to go to Effects, hit Blur, and just increase that quite a bit so the edges aren't quite so sharp. Something like that. And maybe a little less green. Oops, looks like I need to edit this fill. So let's go to that color and gonna go up to just a darker shade. We can even go as far as adding a little of that purple in there since it's kind of close to that color. I think it should actually be maybe on this edge. Purple on the outer edge, I should say. And then that green here. Something like that should work. And you can even go a little lighter at the edge just to give it the constant look there. This shape, I think I might move and rotate a bit. So I'm going to select it in my layers. I'm going to rotate it just a touch to the right since our light source is coming from that way in this case, and just kind of offset it. Make it a little more believable. And then finally, I'm going to adjust this to be a little more blue on the inner portion. And then what I want to do is this gradient is actually just the size of that shape. I kind of want to increase it so it's a little bigger. Let me find that shape in our layers, and you'll see it here. It just, I want it to kind of come out a little bit from that center portion. A little more dynamic in the shades there. And this green, I would say, is a little too bright still. A little, needs to kind of fade off a little more, like so. I wonder if adding a dark color here would make it a little more abrupt. Yeah. And this too, we can adjust the same way. If you select that layer and then get the gradient tool on it, you can kind of pull it out. Mess with the offset. Maybe it's a little bit offset here. Okay. And then finally, we can add some highlights to this mix, and these are going to really set the tone of the image, I think. So these I ended up drawing, I remember, and what I'm talking about are these top glares that are a little hard to see at this point, but it's these shapes here. And they're essentially circles that I created first and then later made a change to with the pen tool. I converted them to curves, so we'll do that now. So you just draw kind of an oval and line it up with this where the purple and blue shape ends, and I'm gonna just convert this to curves to start. And what I like to do is just grab the pen tool. You can double click the shape after you convert it to curves and grab these points and use the node tool to mess around with those. I convert these ones to the side to this sharp edge. So I'm gonna just pull those to the edge where it meets up with the shape boundary. You'll see a highlight if you've got your snapping on. From there, I'm gonna grab the handle in the very top and just pull while holding shift just to where that almost meets the edge to the eye. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the more you spend time on it, the better it's gonna look. And you might have to add another point in the middle. You can just click on the edge there and do so. Or maybe I'll go to this outer edge with this point too. So something like so. And we'll do the same thing on this side. So it's not a perfect shape that you can just draw, unfortunately, but it does do the trick in creating this glare that we're after. That's a lot more believable in the end. So let's see how this will look if I just back out a little bit. And what I'm going to do is definitely decrease the opacity, but I also want to set a blend mode of overlay. And actually we'll bring that opacity back up in this case. And you'll see it kind of creates this effect that's sort of what we're after, but I think to amplify this, I'll simply duplicate this layer once more. So you'll see that kind of vibrance come through, make that real shine going on as you look at a typical camera. And we can edit these points just by double clicking the shape again. I kind of don't want it to be all the way down to the half of the lens, so I'm gonna delete one layer and just edit the one below just to go to the top of that eye of the lens, and then I'll duplicate that layer again. So we can create a similar effect on the very bottom of the image, and you can see that it's quite a little bit off up here, so feel free to adjust those even more. Might just grab that line and pull it out a bit. Same with the one below it. Just hide this layer and do that. Okay, so then I'll do a quick version of the same thing below. Just get the ellipse tool and draw a circle close to the shape you're after. And fortunately, I'm way at the bottom here. I'll go to the very top and convert it to curves again. And I'm going to grab these 2 points on the outer edge and just hold shift when I click those, and then convert them to the sharp points. And then I'm going to grab just this left one, bring it in, and this one will be to this edge. We want to decrease this curve here a bit, same with this side, and then bring in this point to that edge. Looks like this curve needs to be a little bit bigger. And we could do the same, maybe make this one a little bigger than the other one. It looks like this also is not quite parallel to this, perpendicular to this point, so I'm trying to match those up with my eye. I could do it also with a guide if you wanted to, if you want to pull one out. I think in this case, this by hand is perfectly fine. Great. So I think I can see just a little bit off on this side. While we're at it, I'll go ahead and fix that. And the same is true for this side. I think that's enough. All right, so I'm going to do the same method here, full opacity overlay. And we can duplicate that one again. And you'll see it creates those modes we're after in the different tints and highlights. Looks like we're a little over on this shape, so I'll bring that back. Fortunately, I have to do it twice, but I'm going to just delete one layer and do it that way. Just bring it in, just a nudge, basically. Just click it and then hold your arrow key. Not hold it, but tap your arrow key. And Command J, duplicate that layer. And it looks pretty good. Great. So that is kind of wrapping up the design portion of it. Next is kind of running our assets for export. The main point of this is getting it into an iOS app. So to do that, we need to export it in a variety of sizes that Apple will approve once we submit it to the App Store. So in the very next video, I'll go through that process with you.